Our office has since refined that with the aid of stakeholders. The stakeholders identified 52 businesses that they believed would be qualified for the the radio and television broadcasting cap. With the assistance of finance, they whittled that list down to 30, eliminating those who were exempt from the tax and duplicate businesses. And at that analysis, we identified that those taxpayers, those 32 taxpayers, paid $566,000 under a revised structure similar to the production cap. They would pay $149,000 for a net hit to business tax of $417,000. Now, should the city wish to proceed with such a new structure, they would have to define that subclassification so that it does only apply to those taxpayers. Additionally, they would need to make findings that are appropriate, that a different tax treatment is appropriate to these classifications. And then if the city wished to do so, they could identify positive benefits through a study, which was recommended as part of the motion, but however is pending until the identification of funding should council wish to proceed with that study. Our office makes 3 recommendations that can be seen on page 4, and if I will read them. That includes instructing the Office of Finance, with the assistance of the City Attorney, to report to City Council on the establishment of a new subclass for radio and television broadcasters from the existing L045 television and radio broadcasters and theater operators gross receipts business tax category. Instructing the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst to report to City Council on findings that justify modifying the existing tax rate and methodology for the proposed subclass. And instructing our office and the Chief Legislative Analyst and Finance, with the assistance of the City Attorney, to report back within 45 days on other options for modifying the tax methodology and rate for the proposed subclass to address both the comments of stakeholders and to minimize the revenue impact.
And the study would probably be something, if we were to do this, that would go through the Office of Economic Analysis, is that?
Yes, should you wish to. It's not necessary that those positive benefits need to be identified as long as there's certain findings that are made by the city to justify subclass. That study is not necessarily required.
Okay. Let's hear public testimony from Melissa Patak on this side. You can stay at the table. So.
Thank you. Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you very much for your consideration of this issue. We've been at this now for almost 12 months since you introduced your motion, I think in February of last year.
That sounds pretty quick for City Hall.
I'm sorry?
That sounds pretty quick for City Hall.
Okay. So there's been a lot of information gathering. We appreciate all of the diligence the CAO, the Office of Finance have assisted in this effort. We have narrowed the group to the radio and TV broadcasters. If the amount that this Office of Finance has calculated is about $560,000, that means the average tax is probably about $18,800. What our member companies on the broadcast side have experienced is inconsistency in terms of application of the apportionment methodology. It gives no certainty to the ability to calculate your taxes. It creates a lot of frustration, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of Board of Review proceedings, et cetera, et cetera. We think a cap is the best way to go. We do want to minimize the impact to the Treasury. We're happy to work further with you, the committee, with the offices to make sure that is as minimal as it can be. But I do want to emphasize that the uncertainty it causes for the taxpayer, it takes a lot of financial and human resources to work this through. And so when you just put a definite number, it will ease it on everybody's side. And I think that's an intangible cost or benefit that we would get from making this more predictable, certain, and consistent. So I thank you for your consideration. We look forward to moving this forward. We do think that you probably don't need to do an Office of Economic Analysis study. I've done some research both through the department, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, other publicly available information shows that the broadcast industry is a growth industry, it will create jobs. It's predicted to grow by over 7%. Through the end of this decade. The average salary is very high. In the LA market, the average salary is $86,000, which even exceeds the state average for broadcast salary. So we think this, if you lent some certainty to the process, we do believe that there's information out there that would let the city council let you conclude that this would be positive for the city in terms of creating jobs and economic activity. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. I know we can't necessarily put a exact number on this, but what is your gut in conversations about people previous to this saying whether they would stay in Los Angeles or whether at certain points they're packing up? Do you know of specific cases where people have decided to leave, they just said it's too much, or it's one of the compounding factors?
Right. This, I have to say to you, this is different than motion picture and television production, because to be a broadcaster, you have to plant down infrastructure. You have to have offices, you have to have radio towers, et cetera, broadcast towers. However, we do know, and you come in and out of the city, because if you're a broadcaster and you cover news, you're going to cover news in Burbank, you're going to cover news in LA. But you can, if you're making an investment, decide if you're to do that in some place outside the city limits, which would, could change your tax liability. So I do, in all candor, I have to say it's not like a motion picture production where you can plant down in New Mexico or someplace else and make that look the way you need it to look for that temporary production activity. Broadcasting is more rooted. But we do know it's a growth business. Every economic report that you read about it, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows that it is growth. And I think this would be something that LA would say, hey, we're open for business. We want to make it easy for broadcasters to operate in the city of Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Patak? She's up here? Okay. Office of Finance.
Yes, thank you. Ed Cabrera, Assistant Director, Office of Finance. As the industry representative has stated, as well as Ms. Krantz, the Office of Finance has been heavily involved in the participation of the analysis on this issue. We've met multiple times with the industry as well as with CAO and CLA. With regards to the first recommendation, the Office of Finance does have a concern. We do welcome the opportunity to continue to meet and have participation in the discussion. However, we are concerned with being placed in the position of potentially being responsible for picking winners and losers in terms of taxation. We do recommend that the CLA as well as the City Attorney take the lead on recommendation number 1 with the Office of Finance's assistance in terms of providing data. As Office of Finance has previously reported to the work group, there are approximately 3,000 to 4,000 distinct businesses within this fund class. Therefore, trying to identify who the industry believes should be subject to receiving an incentive places the Office of Finance in a difficult position. Also, as the City Attorney has advised the work group, the issue of identifying a subclass is an issue of one that involves legal analysis as well as legislative findings. Therefore, we are more than willing to continue our participation. However, we believe it should be in a support role under the lead of the CLA and the City Attorney.
So the establishment of the subclass, though, which should obviously go through jurisdictionally should go through the Office of Finance, is something you are prepared to...
As far as implementation, yes.
And I would like to add that this is basically the purpose of that recommendation was for implementation.
Got it. Okay.
Certainly, we could implement it just as the incentive for the new car dealers.
Sure.
Once that was decided by the policymakers,
Got it.
Office of Finance definitely would be able to, once there's a clear definition and the legislative findings.
Okay. Great. Questions, colleagues?
I just want to comment. I thought the last time we had one of these recommendations in dealing with business tax that we were going to require a economic study because we're piecing $1 million here, 500,000 here, and whatever, and pretty soon it goes into real money. And what I remember is the CAO did a report a while back that actually analyzed the first $135 million that we had given away, and we came back with less than 10% return in the city of on non-business tax revenue. And so based on that, and then I understand there's a new ad hoc committee in the council to look at business tax, and I'm just concerned that we just keep pushing these things and moving them and reducing our business tax, and we'll all be looking for those business tax come July of next year, or this year, when the budget is implemented. And so I'm just concerned that we're not doing what I think it was a unanimous vote that on the last business tax issue before council that it was requested that we not bring them forward without an economic study.
My recollection, I believe you're referring to the new business exemption, and I do recall Mr. Santana saying that we would do an economic analysis study before coming back with renewing the new business exemption. I would have to look back in the records to see if that was supposed to apply to all business tax proposed changes.
I may have been inarticulate at the time because I made the motion.
Okay.
But the key was is that we had been dealing with these incremental business tax reductions, and the key was that we shouldn't do them incrementally. What we should be doing is analyzing them to determine the larger impact. And what we have often is anecdotal studies, or anecdotal comments about what we think the benefits are. The only real documentation, as we know, is the money is not coming into the general fund.
That is correct with regards to the proposed Office of Economic Analysis study. Our office could proceed with that if that was so called directed by council with the identification of funding. That is the option that council could wish to proceed with.
Yep. Could you check on it? Because I thought that was supposed to be somewhat automatic.
I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Ms. Pack?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate, I think I said this in my remarks, that while it will create an incentive to make the tax more certain and predictable, we want to minimize the revenue loss to the city in this. And we've been working, really diligently to identify, taxpayers in this category. This category was compressed a number of years ago, so there's a lot of filers now added in that weren't previously. So I know we have to define our terms carefully and accurately, but on behalf of those, the broadcasters who are seeking this, we do want to minimize the impact to the city in terms of a revenue loss. And for us, it's about certainty, predictability, and not getting cumbersome audits and interference with the ability to do business, to conduct the business in the broadcaster.
Let's hope this doesn't devastate our accounting business in the city of LA. But
Right, I
we
don't
understand
think it will do that. I think we're talking about small amounts of money on
Absolutely.
on a multi-billion-dollar budget.
Thank you. All right.
Excuse
With
me,
the additional
Chair,
request,
if I may just make one more comment with
Sure.
regards to recommendation number 3. Thank you very much.
Sure.
The Office of Finance does agree that additional work is required with regards to recommendation number 3. However, with any type of change in tax methodology, the Office of Finance does need to state for the record that there could be unintended consequences to other fund classes and other tax classifications. And one particular area that I would speak of is changes in the apportionment method. Currently, the Office of Finance does utilize a variety of apportionment methods because it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Each business, even within a particular industry, may have different factors, may have different business models. So there is flexibility that these businesses may seek deviations from standard apportionment methods that fit within their business model and that provide a fair tax return to the city based on their activities. There are potential negatives to changing apportionment methods, one of which is violation of Prop 218, because, again, if we're talking about multiple types of businesses, a change in apportionment methodology that benefits one taxpayer may increase another taxpayer's tax, and that could be a violation of Prop 218. The second issue is changing apportionment for one particular industry or one set of taxpayers could have unintended consequences where, let's say, a retailer who was not part of that classification can then argue in court that they should be entitled to similar changes in apportionment methods. So there could be unintended consequences that have negative loss of revenue to the city. What finance does believe is that any decision in terms of an incentive should be very clear and unambiguous, whether it's a tax cut or a maximum tax cap. That would be very clear as opposed to changing an apportionment methodology.
When we did this for the entertainment industry, for creative professionals for filming, did those secondary effects come to bear at all?
But that was very specific to that particular class, and there was not a change in apportionment. It was more so an incentive that was given to the creative artist classification, or those types of businesses. And those businesses actually crossed probably about 8 to 10 different classifications. It was centered on the definition of what entailed a creative artist.
But then we also did it just for filming as well, not just for the creative professionals, correct?
Correct, but that was not a change in apportionment. That was more so a change. That was a very clear change in terms of the tax rate or the cap.
Okay, gotcha. Would you be able to provide that analysis as it moves forward, or are you just kind of issuing a general warning?
Just a general warning. We certainly are more than willing to continue to participate in providing our analysis as far as historical tax revenues and gross receipts. But as Councilmember Parks pointed out, Office of Finance has stated on prior occasions that we do not have the ability to provide the economic analysis as far as other revenues that are outside of our purview in terms of collection or administration.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for putting that on the record. If we can go ahead and then on this item, if there's no further questions, we'll go ahead and move approval of the CAO report. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Parks.
Fine on that one until we get an economic analysis.
Okay. Would you like to direct that?
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think we've directed it before. CAO is going to find out
Yeah, I'll look
whether it was articulated as clearly as I thought. But
yes, I will look into the council file. I believe the discussion was during the new business exemption.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will.
Okay, so we'll go forward as a 2-1 vote for now. Okay, thank you. All right, item number 2, please.
Item number 2 is a CLA report concerning incentives for the video game industry.
John Wickham with the CLA's office. The council and your committee had requested that we do some additional research into the video game and digital media industry and what types of incentives might be available for those businesses. Late yesterday, we received some data, some basic data from the Entertainment Software Association that was helpful. They described the video game and hardware accessory industry as a $25 billion U.S. Business impact. And that a lot of those companies are located in California, including many in the city of LA and the Los Angeles region. These are high-paying jobs. The average is $90,000 annually in this industry, so they're very good-paying jobs, and there's a high interest in having those in a particular jurisdiction. They expressed some concerns that they would like to see parity with the film industry in terms of the types of incentives that are available to them to attract them into a region. And then they're also concerned about quality of life issues as being one of the concerns that they have when they locate to a jurisdiction. With regard to the parity issue, the City of Los Angeles business tax structure has placed these types of businesses in the lowest categories in our business tax system. So they do receive, you just 2 years ago passed the digital media tax category, which moved these into the lowest tax category. Many of these businesses also have a wholesale or a retail component to their business activity, and those are also the lowest business classes in the city tax system. So there is a great deal of parity there. Any film production activity that might be associated with the work that they're doing Film LA has reported that any of the requests that come to them for permits, they receive all of the same services that are available to the film industry in that regard. So again, they receive the full set of regulatory and service that the city provides to the film industry. We provide to the video game industry when it's needed and requested and required. So it looks like we've got good parity there on that score. Where we're not seeing parity for that industry is at the state level and the state incentives. The state film tax incentive does not include video game activities in that category. So that's one area, and what we're seeing in either 22 states across the country that have included video gaming in their film tax credit program.
Yep.
So that's one area where there's a significant difference. Now, the concern in California is that our tax, the state tax credit is limited at $100 million a year, and we need to expand that number to include new categories of television and film as well as video gaming. So that's one area where there could be some work done.
Well, go ahead, please continue.
I'm rushing because I know council is going to be here in 10
don't
minutes,
worry.
5 minutes. And then one area where a lot of other jurisdictions are providing benefits is providing a payroll tax credit. City of Los Angeles does not charge a payroll tax. So, that's a plus for us, right? We're already providing that incentive. We're not charging your payroll.
Right.
So that was another area where we're actually doing good service. The last area of concern, and I'm not quite sure how to get my head around this one, is that they have they require very strong, high quality digital infrastructure, communications infrastructure, and they're doing a lot of work in computer software development and such. I'm not sure yet how to characterize what the quality of that service, that infrastructure is in the city of Los Angeles, and whether there's something that could be done in that area to make sure that the city has the best digital electronic infrastructure available to serve this industry, and that would serve the film industry as well and other industries. So that's an area where there needs to be a little more exploration.
Well, thank you. We just, on the state tax credits, I totally agree. I was just looking, LA Times had Governor Cuomo in New York proposing 5-year extension of $420 million a year in New York. So we're talking about $2 billion over the next half decade, where we have only $200 million right now for the next 2 years in an uncertain future. So I do think we should put the city on record of expanding tax credits, and if expanded, to also expand that to new categories as well. We've seen that commercial production that we put ourselves on the record, but also video gaming. I do appreciate that our work here, and I was happy to carry that with Mr. Rosendahl, the reduction for digital media companies to pay a lower rate. I recently was talking to a top 5 video gaming company that's in Calabasas, Westlake Village area, that's considering coming and moving to Los Angeles, and they were scared off initially because they heard about the gross receipts tax when I assured them it was one of the lowest levels that they could pay. The conversation at least is continuing. Whether they'll come or not obviously depends on a lot of different things. And I think that as we look at the state expansion, that is going to be the most critical piece we can advocate for. So I think I would move for us to put that on our legislative agenda for the year again, to officially have us. And we had in here the study that shows every dollar that the state gives, they get at least $1 back. And actually happens vice versa, because the spending happens first and the credit only happens afterwards. So the state budget is protected, and it's a huge impact on our local economy to have filming here. But same thing with video game companies, and I think it would send a strong signal to say that we would push for that to happen at the state level as well, and to call on the state to, and we'd support legislation that would do that. So with that, Mr. Labanja, Mr. Parks? Okay. Parks? Okay. We'll go ahead and we'll move that forward. Thank you. We had already had our general public comment, but I received a public comment card afterwards. Mr. Walsh?
Mr. Chair,
Sorry.
just for the record, since there's no report submitted for item number 2, is it the intent of this committee to continue discussion of this matter?
I would make a motion, actually, just to adopt that as city policy for our legislative agenda, to advocate for. It's consistent with what we've done in the past. Mr. Wickham?
Maybe to give the clerk something to have on the record, that you would instruct the CLA to prepare a resolution for that information, and we will bring that to council when this is scheduled into council.
Perfect. Okay. And then we'll move that forward. Thank you. You guys earned your money today. Thanks. John Walsh, we'll reopen public comment if you'd like to make your comments. as a courtesy. Take your time. You've got 2 if you'd like them.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. Inside here is the mayor's 60th birthday cake. Stay tuned. When we reach public comment, we will have the first international party for the mayor. 60, big 6-0.
All right, that will close the public comment, and that finishes our agenda for today. Thank you all. This meeting of the Jobs and Business Development Committee is adjourned. Thank you all very much.